If you know that your life is finite, that you don't have an infinite number of days, it makes every day more precious. So I'm like, how do I make every day more valuable? How do I capture the things that are going on in my day, even if I'm not leaving doing some of the other things and interacting with some of the people that I was? Like, how do I make those days more valuable? And how do I make them more memorable? Hi, friend. This is James Marland. Thank you so much for taking a moment of your time to listen to the episode. Today, I'm going to tell you 3 things that I am not going to do in 2025 to make this year a success. This is probably going to be a little shorter episode, but a little more personal episode because I really want to share with you what I'm doing that I think is going to make my 2025 a much better year than 2024. These are things I've been learning over time, and I want to share them with you. So 3 things I'm not going to be doing in 2025. The first thing is I'm not going to use social media to cure boredom. I I've realized that when something is taking too long, either in the grocery store or on the computer when I'm loading things and uploading things, or even when like I do a lot of computer work and the computer is converting something and it takes like 30 seconds, I will instinctively reach for my phone to look at a social media, look at an email, look at a fantasy football score. Like I'm using my phone to cure my boredom. Now, why is that bad? Like, why is using that bad? Well, in short doses, it's probably not so bad to spend 10, 15 minutes throughout the day looking at social media or curing your boredom. But the problem is the apps I use, the social media I use, the Facebook, like, and even email, it just draws you in. It draws you in. And instead of taking 30 seconds to cure your boredom, it takes 30 minutes. Like you'll get distracted or you'll get involved in a conversation that's not business related or not producing anything. You'll watch 20 minutes of cat videos, which sometimes I will share during the day. So I have decided I'm not going to use social media or my phone to cure those 30 seconds of boredom. Instead of using like social media mush to fill my brain, I want to read something impactful, something that is going to change my life. And in those 30 seconds of boredom or 5 minutes of boredom while the computer's compiling a video, I can read something that is good. Now, I decided that I'm going to do this Bible reading plan. I'm going to read the New Testament in a year. And I got some people to join with me. And I'm actually really excited about that because instead of mushing my brain with cat videos and just random silliness, I can actually read something that is important to me, something that is valuable to me, something that I've wanted to do. But then I'm also doing it with a group of people that I love and who love me. So my new behavior, I mean, it's still on my phone, but my new behavior is to go to my reading plan. And how and I if I get bored, I'll just go to the reading plan and read for a few minutes. And what if I end up, reading it 3 or 4 times in one day? That's still way better. I'm feeding my mind. I am doing things that are way better for myself than just that moment of adrenaline dopamine hit of watching a cute cat video or a car chase or whatever else comes up on the feed. Video games, Magic the Gathering. I sometimes watch those. So, how can this help you? Well, pick something. If you find yourself curing boredom with your phone, like I do, or doing something that isn't beneficial, find something that you wanna do and replace it. Now, if it's on your phone, find something on your phone. Maybe you have that Calm app, or maybe you have like a meditation app, or maybe you have a guided reading, and maybe just do that, you know? Or one thing I thought about doing that I didn't do is like, if I have those moments of boredom, maybe spend that minute cleaning my office or doing push-ups or something. Replace that activity with something that you really want to do that's going to benefit your life. So I am not going to in 2025, my goal is to not cure boredom with social media or my phone. All right, number 2. One the second thing I'm going to do in 2025 that I'm not going to do in 2025 is I'm not going to go to bed without a plan for success for tomorrow. I'm not going to bed without a plan for success for tomorrow. What I was doing was just going to bed without writing anything down, without thinking, without journaling, listening to a podcast. I normally listen to podcasts at the end of the night. Scrolling social media for one last time. Sometimes, the scrolling on the social media, you say you're going to do it for 5 minutes, but then you do it for 30 minutes, and now you're going to wake up groggy in the morning. So I was going to bed without a plan, doing things that once again mush my brain at the end of the night. And I realized you can pre-plan your success for the next day. You can write down one thing you're going to do, and then the next day, make sure you accomplish it. I'm not talking about, climbing Mount Everest or doing something that takes months of planning. But what is the one thing that if you were going to do tomorrow again? So you're pre-planning. You're like, if I was going to do tomorrow again, what is the one thing I would want to have done that would make me feel accomplished, that would make me feel like I have success? Now, maybe there's some of you that you have a whole list of things. There's 20 things, 30 things you need to get done. Stuff in the house, stuff in your business, stuff in your relationship, paying the bills. You have all those things down. But that's a to-do list. This is like a success list. Like what is going to make me proud? What is going to move me one step closer to my goals? My relationship goals, my spiritual goals, my community goals, my marriage goals, my business goals. Like what's one thing, like at least one thing I can do to make that the next day a success? I can plan my success. I can do one thing, right? Like it's one thing. What I was doing in the past is I was just going to bed nervous, going to bed worried. Sometimes I would grind my teeth at night and wake up with a headache because I was just so like my brain wouldn't shut off, and I was nervous about how, imposter syndrome and not feeling like I'm doing enough. Entrepreneurs tend to have that ingrained in their brain that they're always behind, and that's how I'd feel. And so I would go to bed nervous and worried. But now, at least if nothing else gets done, I have a plan to make the next day a success, to pre-plan the success for the next day. So that is my new behavior. At the end of the night, um, I open up a spreadsheet on my phone and just write down the goals. And why do I do it on a spreadsheet? It's because I want to record them and review them and just use it. If I maybe you don't have this problem, but if I don't have a specific place for things, I'll write it down on, my 3 open journals or a random scrap of paper or a 3 by 5 card or a Post-it note, and then I lose it. So I like to have it in a place where I can access it on my phone, on my tablet, on my computer. So I put it in a spreadsheet. So that's my new behavior. So I'd recommend for you to stop going to bed worried, stop going to bed without a plan, stop going to bed without planning at least one thing that you can succeed in for the next day. Just start a journal, a paper journal that's right by your bed that you write down your win for the next day, or do it on a spreadsheet like I do, or some way to pre-plan your win for the day. And it's such a when you go back and review like all the wins that you've had, it's very empowering. So that's item under number 2. Number 1, I'm not going to use social media to cure boredom. Number 2, I'm not going to bed without a plan. Number three is I am not going to be focused on my deficits. I'm not going to be focused on what I don't have. What I've been doing for years, probably many years, is what Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Harding calls focusing on the gap. So this is from their book, The Gap and the Gain. And I think this was probably one of the most impactful books of 2024 for me is what I have done for probably most of my life is focus on what I don't have. I focus on what I'm missing or how far I have to go from where I am now to success. And I look at what I don't have and I compare I compare myself to other people and how good they are at their things and how polished they are and how professional they are and the audience they have and the content that they're producing. And that makes me miserable. As Andy Stanley said in one of his messages, there's no win in comparison. And, you know, I I compare it's just I compare my beginning to somebody else's middle or end. There was somebody I was looking at the other day and I just love it's marketing for hippies, Tad Hargrave. And I just like, oh man, how he spells out his hub marketing and just the simplicity of knowing who your customer is and just all that. I'm like, oh, I love how he's doing it. But then I looked at like the start of his company. He's been doing it for 15 years, at least 15 years, at least according to LinkedIn. And I'm like, oh, well, that's why he's so good. He's been doing it for so much longer and he's got it refined and he's been helping people. So that comparison, there's a trap. There's a trap in comparison. And so and Dan Sullivan calls it the gap. You know, you're focusing on the gap in your life and that makes you unhappy and that makes you miserable. It's what I started doing is what they suggest in the book is focus on the gain, focus on the wins. And and this goes along with the number 2, going to bed without a plan. At the end of the day, while I am doing, my plan, I also recount 3 things at least that I'm proud of for the day. 3 wins. What did I accomplish that day? That keeps me grounded that, yes, maybe you're not making stratospheric leaps, no rocket launches, no massive lucky breaks, but you are taking steps to build your business, to build your practice, to build your skills, to build your relationships, to build your network that are going to pay off in the future. Just remember how far you've come. And I told this story recently actually about the shoveling incident where my brother and I went out to shovel and I was kind of depressed and like, oh man, we're never going to get done with this long driveway. And he said, yeah, but look how far we've come. And I looked back and man alive, we had done at least a third of the driveway. All well in my head, I'm like, oh, we're never going to get done. It's such a bad, I hate this. And we'd actually gone really far, which looking back at how far you've gone motivates me to go further. So, what I'm committed to doing in 2025, I'm not going to go to bed focusing on how far I have to go or how bad it is or comparing myself to other people. I'm going to choose to write my story and recount the wins that I've had for the day. No matter how big or small, every day you can write the story of your wins. So I encourage you to do the same thing. As you go to bed, put a positive spin on the day. No, you are the author of your own story. You're the author of how you interpret the day. Even if you had a big loss, there is a win that you can find from it. You can interpret it and change the story to the lessons you've learned, if you got out of a relationship, even though it was difficult or hard, at least you're not going to be wasting more time. Like there's ways to spin bad things going on to make it a win. Or maybe, one of the things that that happened to my family growing up was my parents, they got married and they had a baby girl. And Her name was Becca or Rebecca. And a couple days after she was born, something medical happened and she suffocated and died, like, in the hospital. Tragic, terrible, horrible thing for a newlywed couple. I don't even think they'd been married a year. Horrible for a newlywed couple to go through. And for the longest time, why why did that happen? God, why did you allow this to happen? What good could come from this pain? But man, my parents will tell you this, over the years, that gave them such a sensitive heart to people, women and couples who had gone through tragedy, and for foster care, and for helping other people, and for supporting people who are who have just gone through a tragedy, and they were able to turn that horrific thing in their life into something good, and they couldn't see why it was good for a while, but they were able to say, "This happened, and we were able to use something bad and turned it into good because we helped so many people, and it gave us a platform to help other people who were hurting." So, if you're hurting right now, I'm not saying you're gonna get over it. I'm not saying that it wasn't a bad thing that happened to you, but you get to write your story and you get to figure out how this can be turned into something that is beneficial to you, something that you've learned or you grow from. So, those were the 3 things. One, I'm gonna rephrase these in the positive instead of I'm not going to. One, I'm going to replace doom scrolling with, positive learning, in a community. Number 2 is I'm going to bed planning for my success for the next day, at least one thing that I'm going to do that will make that day success. Number 3 is I'm gonna focus on the progress that I've made. I'm going to intentionally choose to focus on the positive and the things that are good for me instead of comparing myself and feeling bad about what I don't have. Number 4, bonus. So I have a bonus though. Bonus thing I'm not going to do is I'm not going to take my days for granted. What I normally do i- is I live my life without much recognizing what's going on or even the passing of time. And this has really gotten worse because because of working from home. Like, I don't have to drive into traffic. I don't have to go to meetings with people in person. I don't have to put on a fake face and pretend everything's okay or pretend, and perform for other people. And the footprint I'm leaving in the world, like going from place to place, is so much smaller. If I don't go take my walks, sometimes I'm walking less than 1,000 steps a day. 'Cause I get up, do the, getting ready for work type stuff, eat a little bit, grab my coffee, and sit in front of my desk for 6 or 8 hours, so on the computer. And then in the evening, we cook, and then we go watch a little TV, and then go back to bed, and, I could be walking very little, and there's something the brain does when you've done the same trip over and over again, that it forgets things. Like, it's an efficient use of your energy. Have you ever traveled to a place the first time and it felt like it took forever, and you noticed every detail and your brain was alert, and you noticed the signs, and you noticed the landscape, and you noticed, like, the different houses or the different stores. And then if you do the same trip over and over again, your brain isn't really attached to those details anymore. Sure, it might notice if a building burned down or if there's a new store or something was built on that trip, but it doesn't really notice all the things that it's already filed in your brain. And I really believe that when we work from home and we do the same trip over and over again, our brain is efficiently forgetting like all the things that it already knows. And so you can go, maybe I haven't seen a study on this, but I believe that the people who work from home will it will feel like time has gone past and they can't remember exactly what they were doing at home. And this is my experience anyways, because of the same trip, your mind forgets things just like in the car, your mind forgets things as you go on the trip. If you're working in the same place, doing the same thing, not meeting new people, not doing new extra things or new experiences, you're going to forget things. And so I've been working from home for about 4 years now, and life just seemed to like go by so fast, like really fast. Like what happened in 2022? I don't know. It's almost 2025. I don't know what happened. I don't remember what I'm doing. And I was taking my days for granted. And there's a verse in Proverbs or Ecclesiastes, I can't remember. It's like, teach me to number my days. And and if you know that your life is finite, that you don't have an infinite number of days, it makes every day more precious. So I'm like, how do I make every day more valuable? How do I capture the things that are going on in my day, even if I'm not leaving and doing some of the other things and interacting with some of the people that I was? Like, how do I make those days more valuable? And how do I make them more memorable? So what I'm doing to stop that is, along with my goals, like my planning for success and writing down 3 things, I'm trying to write down 1 to 3 stories that if somebody asked me, "Hey, tell me about a story from today." I'm trying to recount something that went on during that day that is memorable. Now, it might not make a keynote speaker, it might not make a story, for your business or for your podcast or for your web page, but it's just something that happened today that I can go back to and say, this is something that happened in my mind that I thought was important. For example, I I was at a stoplight at an intersection that's kind of weird, where the other side of the intersection is on a hill and there's 2 lanes of traffic on the other side. And if you're not careful, the one lane that's going straight is completely hidden. And I saw an accident there it was in December. Saw an accident there in December where the car in front of me turned in front of the car traffic that was going straight because they didn't see them. And why that happens is the cars that are turning to the left can block the other lane, and the other lane, the people could be going for there's a long lead up to it, and they could be going 40 miles an hour zooming by, so you can't see them. And so my story for that day is, instead of just looking at what's in front of me, I look as far back in traffic as possible to see the new cars coming up to the lane to try to determine if they are going straight or left or right. And that, to me, that was a good moment of meaning, because in life, you sometimes don't, if you're not aware of the danger coming, you're just going to turn and be ignorant and be blindsided by something that you could have seen if you were looking for it. So that was my story for that day. Like, hey, I realized something going on in my head, some behavior that I was doing that probably could make a good story or a good filler or a good blog post about something later in the future. So I'm writing that down, but then that also makes that day more memorable. I have something that went on that I thought about, and these things, these 5 seconds of meaning go on all the time in your head, and they're happening all the time, whether you're sitting in front of your computer for 8 hours or going out in the community and buying things, your mind is working all the time. It's just remembering to capture some of those stories and make it a priority. And this makes my days longer. Like, it puts more energy in my days. It makes me think more about my days, and it also helps me remember, like, as I'm remembering these things, I remember other stories that I can write down. So I am not going to take my days for granted. In 2025, I'm going to make memories and do things uh, that I have to plan to do things and make new memories. I am making memories. I'm going to consciously write down those memories Some of them will probably show up in the podcast. Some of them will show up in a blog. Some of them will just be me and my private stories that I remember I learned a lesson and they're internal. But all of us have those stories. And if we take time to remember them, they will make your life richer and greater. And also you'll remember some of the stories from your past. So those are the 4 things now that I'm going to do in 2023. 4 things I'm gonna do that I'm not gonna do in 2025 to make it a much better year. So what are at least one of those things that sound attractive to you? I'd love to hear about it. You can either post, send me an email, james@coursecreationstudio.com, or join the community group and let me know what you're going to do to make 2025 a much better year for yourself. Thank you so much for listening. It's now time to go put your mission in motion. If you've listened this far, we might be a good fit to work together in 2025. So I invite you to go to coursecreationstudio.com and look for the About page or the Contact Me page. Send me an email or sign up for a quick meeting with me to see if I can help you reach more people with your message and create more impact and make more income in 2025 with your online course, sharing your expertise. I'd love to help you. It's one of the things I love doing, helping helpers help more people get their message out and share their knowledge with people that can help them. Go to coursecreationstudio.com and sign up for a meeting with me or email me, james@coursecreationstudio.com. I am starting a cohort January 9th. I'd love to have a few more members to help in 2025.